Hi there, my name's Marion May and I'm going to be talking you through how to read your own chart. A lot of people, when they first come to a human design and get this wonderful looking chart, first thing they want to know is, what does it mean? It's a very complex chart, it's got lots of layers, and you can get a reading. You can get a qualified analyst, or like myself, I'm an uncertified analyst, which means I've done the training but I haven't taken the certification at the end, to actually help you read your chart. They deliver a reading and they tell you about your chart. Then a lot of people obviously get curious about other people's charts. So rather than this being about me reading a person's chart, what I wanted to put out here now is the information to enable you to begin to understand a chart. Obviously your own chart to begin with, but also the charts of your friends and your family, so you begin to understand what this chart is showing you, what it's introducing you to in terms of concepts, and of course some of the jargon, because there's some of that in it as well. So this is less of me giving you a fish, more of me teaching you how to fish, so that you can then go on and find the information. There's so many different places you can find the information nowadays. There are courses, and you can go to Jovian Archive and the International Human Design School online. Then there's plenty of Facebook groups where lots of information is shared, as well as personal experiences of living this information. YouTube videos, Google searches will reveal lots and lots and lots of information. So this is what I'm aiming to do here, is to show you, give you a guide as to how to put those pieces together for yourself. Because otherwise it's a little bit like somebody giving you a piece of a jigsaw puzzle, but you've got no idea what the picture is on the box, so you've got no idea where to put it. This hopefully will show you the logical framework that is a human design chart, so that you can begin to do that for yourself. So I'm just going to go through here. So here is an example of a chart. Now, if you've got your chart from mybodygraph.com, it'll look a little different to this. It's got curvy lines now. It's still the same kind of information. It's just represented in different ways from different sites. So what we basically have is a whole collection of shapes and lines and numbers and planetary symbols and reds and blacks. And I'm just going to be teaching you what each of these means, rather than reading a specific chart. So this is what's behind the chart, if you like. This is how the chart gets created. And human design, when it was downloaded to Ra Uru Hu, was given as this synthesis of knowledge of some of the ancient wisdom traditions and updated with a modern day understanding of genetics. So you see around the edge of this circle we have the I Ching hexagrams, all arranged around in a wheel. And this wheel pretty much represents the year. It starts from actually number 41 and goes around in an anti-clockwise direction as the sun progresses. And that's our year. And you can see inside, we've got the numbers for those I Ching hexagrams, and then inside that is the astrology symbols. And then inside that you can see where the planets are. And there are two colours shown here, two different planetary activations, which I'll talk about in a minute. Now, this is also synthesizing information such as the Hindu chakra system. So we're looking at something like a chakra system, but it's developed, it's evolved, it's gone further. And there's also the themes of the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life encoded in here as well. And then it's mapped it into a structure that can tell you about your genetic makeup. So this is all sort of deep stuff in the chart that you don't really need to be worried with. What we start off with always is the surface level of the chart, and how to read that. So first thing to start with is to understand that there's red and there's black, as you've seen from this chart. The red planetary activations are taken from 88 days prior to your birth. And this is when something called the design crystal from the earth comes into your body and helps to make your body form. Design is usually slightly less available to your mind in terms of being able to understand yourself. So we often say of the red, imagine it's like a tunnel where the information or your actions emerge from a tunnel. You're not consciously aware of them. So you often find people will talk about the design or the unconscious. These two are often used interchangeably, but this is where the activations come from. 88 days prior to your birth. And no, it doesn't matter whether you were born prematurely, it doesn't matter how you were born, this just all works out. And then the black numbers are the planetary positions at the actual time of your birth. And this is when the personality crystal, which is your consciousness, comes into the body, comes in from a crystal consciousness bundle. And again, this is part of the deeper structure. If you ever want to investigate this, you can look at what does a personality crystal consciousness bundle mean, and what does it look like, and where does it come from? Because Ra has done videos and talks and books about this. But for the purposes at the moment, we just need to know this forms the personality. So this is who you think you are, how you know yourself. And these aspects will be quite easy for you to identify and you go, oh yeah, that's me. Yes, I know that about me. These two are held together to kind of like create the illusion of ourselves in this life as traveling through time and space as separate beings by something that's called the magnetic monopole. All right, so we're looking at the chart that comes from these two activations taken when they are glued together, when they're held together by this magnetic monopole. So that's what makes this chart here. The first thing you will learn about in your chart, or let's just say if we start with the broadest level of information, and then I'll go gradually into more detail. The broadest level will be your type. There are 4 distinct types in human design. 75% of people are generators, or what are known as manifesting generators. So if you have a defined sacral center, and that's this red square one up from the bottom, then you are some form of generator. Okay? Manifesting generator means that you have a defined sacral center, and either that or one of these other centers that I've labeled as motors has a direct connection through to the throat center. As you can see in this chart here, there isn't anything directly connected to the throat center by a colored line. All right, so we're looking at the colored aspects here, because when I ever use the word defined, that means it's colored. It's either colored red or black, or it's one of these shapes that's colored in. So defined sacral is a red square. If your sacral center is colored in white, then you're not a generator. Okay, so this is the chart actually of a generator that we have here, rather than a manifesting generator. Okay, so you can, once you've found out your type, you can go and search for that online. There is lots and lots of information about what it means to be a generator, what that means for your aura, what it means for how you live in this world. Similarly, for manifesting generator, there is a subtle difference between the two. So if you don't have a defined sacral center, then you will be one of these other types. So the next one is projector, and there are 21% of the population are projectors. So the first thing to know is if you have an undefined, so a white sacral center, and no motor center connected to your throat, okay, that will mean that you're a projector. Projectors are incredibly varied. They can have everything from just two centers defined, colored in, to 8 out of the 9 centers colored in. Very, very variable. So if you're not a projector, you would be either one of the other two, a manifestor or a reflector. So a manifestor, these are 8% of the population at the moment. This would be an undefined sacral center, so white sacral center, and one of these motor centers connected to the throat. So there'd be a colored line, whether it's red, black, or red and black, going between one of these motor centers and the throat center, and the throat center would be colored in. That would be a manifestor chart. And then if you've come up with a chart that has absolutely nothing, none of the blocks, none of the centers and the shapes coloured in, then you'd be a reflector. Okay, so there's no defined centers if you're a reflector. Reflectors are 1% of the population. So once you know your type, there's a whole load of information you can find about your type. The type really describes how your aura functions. Okay, so I've just done this slide here just as a reminder to see, you can see examples of the 4 different types of charts here. Okay, manifestor, generator, reflector and projector. I didn't do a separate one for the manifesting generator because they really do come under the same type as generator. So it gives your aura a particular quality, and our aura is how we meet other people. So it's of absolute foundational importance to understand that this is your aura function, how you are energetically in the world. So generators, they have this open and enveloping aura that will just take in energy from other people. A projector has a focused and absorbing aura, which means it really is focused. Projectors are focused on the other person. Their aura kind of penetrates into somebody else's aura. Manifestor has a closed and repelling aura. So it actually feels like it's somebody's closed off, and there's a slight push feeling that when you encounter a manifestor, almost an energetic boundary, be a little bit sort of pushed back. And then a reflector has a resistant and sampling aura. So they're sort of sampling the environment around them all the time. So this is critical to understanding how you work in the world, how your body, your form works in this world. And each of these types has its own strategy and authority, and these are the keys for your success. These are the keys for how your body vehicle naturally operates when you're not interfering with it. So if you're a generator type or a manifesting generator, then the strategy for you is to wait to respond. And this is a response that comes from in your body, and it's the sacral center, and it responds with available energy or not, in order for you to experience your true theme of satisfaction. So your strategy and authority is how you get your theme, right? When you're operating through strategy, and we'll come to authority next, you get satisfaction. So for the projector, projectors need to wait for an invitation, and the invitation from another person, because they're here to guide others. So they're waiting to be recognized and for an energetic form of invitation to come from somebody else, and then they will experience their true theme of success. Manifestors, with their closed and repelling aura, actually need to inform people before their actions in order to experience their true theme of peace. And reflectors, with this sampling aura, need to wait a lunar cycle. So they're waiting a complete cycle of the moon in order for their true theme of surprise to really be lived out. So this is understanding how your vehicle, your body really works. And then we come on to the authority part. So the strategy is the first part, authority is your second part. And your chart will show your inner authority, and it will give a name of a center. So either solar plexus, it's an emotional process, or sacral, responding. Or it can be the spleen, or splenic, you might say, which is an intuitive authority. Or it can be the will or the ego, which is that sense of imposing your will, using your will as your decision-making process. Or the self or the G center, which is a theme of love, identity and direction. So these can be the inner authority centers. And by inner authority, we're talking about how you feel, what is a correct decision for you. We've all been taught to go into our mind and to work things out from there. But human design is bringing us back to the natural life of our body, that before we got conditioned away from our own internal sense of how to be ourselves, that this is what's underneath, this is what we were doing. So feeling your way into something, if you have a solar plexus authority, or responding in the moment with available energy or not, or an intuitive sense, or with that willpower, or a general sense of inner direction. Okay, these are the inner authorities that you can have. There are also some charts that will come up where it says none for inner authority, and this would mean you either got something that's called a mental projector or a reflector. And there isn't a, obviously for a reflector, there is not a defined center that can be an authority. Same for a mental projector, none of these ones that I've indicated here are defined, therefore they can't be used as an authority. So there's a different approach for those. So for mental projectors and reflectors, really, it's a more kind of environmental awareness, is a different process. But again, once you know what your inner authority is, you can go away and research it and learn and from other people about how to use it, how to begin to connect with that real inner knowing that you have in yourself of what is correct for you, what is the right thing for your life, for your experience, so that you will have that theme, that satisfaction, or that success, or that peace, or that surprise for the reflectors. Yeah, so that you experience those, you need to be really connected into your body for this body awareness to be working and guiding your decisions. I'm now going to just take you through what these defined centers mean. So if you have either of these two centers defined in your chart, they'll be colored in. Right? So there's the head center right at the top. And these are both called pressure centers. And this is because there's a kind of feeling of pressure in the body that comes from them. And they pressurize it, like they provide almost like the fuel pumps or the pumps for the energy through the body, driving it to the throat where it can then be expressed in some form of energy or speech. So the head is driving us to think why, how, what. So it's the inspiration, the doubt, the confusion, the need to know, the pressure of thinking, the pressure of questions. And then down at the root, this is the drive for change, growth and expansion, and it's actually where we're fueled with adrenaline through the root center. And it's this pressure that we have for change, for growth, for expansion. So if you have either of these centers defined, this is the theme of them. They have this, you live with this constant sense of this pressure inside you. For you, it's natural, and you're designed to handle it. Then we have possibly three awareness centers. So when you have one of these three colored in, it means that you have a defined awareness center. You have an ability to be aware through this center of things in your external environment, aware maybe internally. There's all sorts of different kinds of awareness. So the spleen is a health and survival awareness, and it's aware in the present moment. So it's our oldest awareness. It's what it has obviously enabled us to survive as a species. And think, you know, animal out in a field, ears pricked, aware, alert of what's going on around in order to be able to survive. And then we have the Ashna, which sits below the head center. And this is an awareness across time. This is an awareness of mental concepts and opinions and ideas. So if you're aware, if you've got this defined, that means you're able to be aware of things in the past and the future. You're able to form ideas and concepts. And you have this ability consistently within you. Then on the right-hand side, we have the solar plexus. Now, this is a developing awareness. This is our latest developing center for awareness. It's not fully developed yet. We're right on the cusp of this. This is something that's going to begin to become available to people who are born after the year 2027. I'm not going to go into why or what 2027 is all about now, but just suffice it to know that this is our next evolutionary step, is to have full emotional and possibly spiritual, in whatever way you understand that, awareness through this solar plexus center. So it's not a full awareness center yet, but we still call it an awareness center just because this is a map, if you like, for where we're heading. So these three different kinds of awareness, if you have these activated, one or more of these activated, you have this aware functioning in your body. Then, as we've seen before, I've labeled them, we have 4 motor centers. So just think like motor in a car. You know, you turn the engine on and the motor, you can feel it. There's an energy there. It doesn't really do anything until it's kind of hooked up with you know, the ability to move. So that'd be like the gearbox, for which in this analogy, think the throat center. So these are motors. So you could have all 4 defined, 1 defined, or none of these defined. So look in your chart and see whether any of these are coloured in. And if they are, it means you have motor energy in your body. And again, they've got the different themes. So the sacral, we've talked about already. This is the sexuality and sort of life force vitality energy. The root, which again, as I've already mentioned, is a pressure center. It's also a motor center. And it's that drive for growth and adaptation and change. The solar plexus, I already mentioned, is also an awareness center, our developing awareness center. And this is about the energy of emotions and passions. And then the will, or the ego center, it goes by 2 different names often. This is it's a slightly smaller motor. This is but also a powerful motor for willpower. It carries the themes of self-worth and self-esteem. Motors, I mean, I'm not going to say that anything is good or bad because that's not what human design is about. Motors are just a quality of energy that have the ability to drive action when connected up. Okay. And then there's 2 other centers I haven't yet mentioned. There's the G or self center, the yellow diamond there, which has the themes of love, identity, and direction. So you could, in our motor analogy, you could say this is like the GPS system. It sets the direction. And then the throat is where the energy comes out into the world as speech and action. It's also representing metamorphosis and change. So the throat is almost like the gearbox. So those motor energies, when they're hooked up to the throat, they can really drive action in the world. So that's the tour through the different centers that you can have defined. So looking at your chart, hopefully you have identified which ones you have defined and which ones you don't. Anything that's defined means that it's there, it's been switched on, it works in this way since you were born, and will stay that way until you die. So motor centers are always motor centers. Awareness centers are always awareness centers. Pressure centers is always pressure. This is our theme that you live with consistently, and you can depend on this. So we always start with learning about what's defined and because that's what's consistent, and that's where we find ourselves. That's where we find our true self inside, is through this definition. What is that is always here that I can identify as me. A center becomes defined when 2 numbers at opposite ends are both defined, both activated. So I've given an example here. You look at 2 blocks that say channel. So this particular channel is formed from the 37 in the solar plexus center. So that's been activated in this case by Venus in the personality side. So it's black. And then on the design side, in the red side, you can see 40 that's been activated there by the moon. And they both form a channel in this sense that they connect to each other. It's called a channel. And that's what actually activates the centers at either end. So that activates the will center and the solar plexus center through these activations. There are other activations where the line only goes halfway, either in red or black. So look on the left where I've said hanging gate and ring 48 in Mars. That only goes halfway along and then it turns white. So this is called a hanging gate because it comes from a defined center, but it doesn't go the whole way along the whole channel. A dormant gate, such as I've indicated up the top here, is the same thing, but it comes out of an undefined center. And they just have different ways of operating. They all still make up part of who you are. They just are not so consistently active, and they have different ways of working. So with a hanging gate or a dormant gate, what you're looking at is an activation here that can connect with somebody else's hanging gate or dormant gate. So for example, with the 48, if somebody else comes into your space and they have gate 16 activated here in the throat, I'll just color it in for you just to see. If they have that activated, then those two connect. And it's a little bit like the two sides of a Velcro fastening. They kind of latch onto each other and they connect. And that would mean whilst you're with that person, you and that person both have the ability to express through this particular channel. And then when that person leaves your aura space, that activation goes with them and it goes back to being just the hanging gate. So it doesn't function as the full channel anymore. It doesn't have that ability to express through to the throat. So this is why you can feel like you're a different person, or you can behave differently depending on who you're with. Some things you can find are very easy to do when you're with a certain person, but when you're on your own, suddenly you just go, it's just really difficult. I can't find the words, I can't express it anymore. I just haven't got the energy to sit still and do it. So as we're interacting with different people, different parts of us are coming out into play. So this is where the whole kaleidoscope comes out of us, a whole different area where things come and go and pop up and disappear. And as children, when we're not taught that we use our own defined centers and our authority center to know what is good and correct for us, we then start to get confused in this arena. Oh, I should be able to do that because I can do it when that person's there. I should be able to do it. The common kind of thinking that can come in through childhood. And we call it conditioning, but really what it is it's adaptive strategies. It's where we're starting to create adaptive strategies for what we're not. I'm going to go on to more about that sense of what we're not later on, but I just wanted to introduce this here, because this is where we're getting down into quite a level of detail here. But, again, you can look through your chart and see what these aspects are. And you can go and look up the numbers. The number will tell you what that particular activation is all about. They all have themes. Similarly, the channels have names, and they will tell you about the theme of what it is for that energy flowing in that between those two centers. Okay, so we're getting down into some more nitty-gritty details about what this chart shows about who you are, how your energy functions, how it flows, what personal characteristics that brings, what forms of behavior that brings as a consistent aspect to you, and then also which aspects of you are inconsistent and why they're inconsistent. And what you do about that inconsistency is you follow your strategy and your authority. And then that will see you through this maze. So you don't have to learn it all with your mind. Oh, I must remember that. You just latch onto your own inner authority, your own inner way of processing this information in order to be able to then stay true to yourself. Okay, so I think I'm done with that one. And on to the next slide, hopefully. There we go. Circuits. This was getting Yeah. This is relevant to understanding your chart at a surface level as well. All these channels are part of circuits and the gates, so they're all part of circuits. So if you know which circuit it comes in, that also gives you information about how it operates. So, for example, on the top right here, we've got tribal circuitry. So you'll see in Facebook groups, people will be talking about, oh, I'm tribal. I'm a very tribal person. I've got lots of tribal activations. And that means that they've got lots of gates or channels activated in this circuit. And the theme for tribal circuitry is support and bargains. So it's kind of loyalty and support. It's the way the tribe works. And sustained by bargains, as in like, I'll do this for you and you'll do that for me. You can see this in the way communities work when they're working really well. Everyone's supporting each other. So this theme is carried through all these different channels and gates. So again, you can look up which circuit do your channels activated in. You'll get people who'll say, well, I'm a real individual. So then you're looking at the knowing circuit, this one in the middle here. These are all the individual activations. And the individual has the theme, as it says in the name, individual, being very individualistic. But these energies come in a pulse, and the theme through them is empowerment. Okay. There's integration down in the bottom right. That's a complicated little circuit on its own, and the theme of that is self-empowerment. And then on the left, we've got the collective logic on the left-hand side and the abstract emotional, collective emotional on the right-hand side. These are all part of what's called the collective circuit. One is focused around logic and one is focused around emotional, but they both have the theme of sharing. So if you've got quite a few activations in the collective circuitry, then whatever it is you're doing, you're always going to want to be seeking about how can I share this? How can everybody share in this? The collective is the wider, whereas the tribe is a small community. Collective is wider collection of people. It's almost like all of humanity. How many people can I share this with? I want everybody to know about this. Whereas if you're a very tribal person, you'll go, well, I want my neighbours and my friends and my family to know about this. I'm not interested in the rest of the world. There are some minor circuits, which I haven't included in here. But again, if you really want to get into those, if you've got something in those, you can go and look them up. But every channel is covered by what I've put in here. So again, you can look at that and you can begin to understand, oh, that's why I'm always wanting to do these things with friends. Oh, that's why I'm always so sort of like, oh, I want to do it my way, I'm individualistic, or oh, this is why I'm so concerned about how much support people are giving me and how much support I give them, because actually I'm very tribal in my definition. Most charts will have one or two channels, maybe in maybe you've got two individual channels, but you've also got a collective channel, or you've got a tribal channel, an individual channel and a collective channel. So we're very rarely all one thing. And then when you start looking at the hanging gates and the dormant gates as well, you'll find that there's a complete mix. We are all of these. We are not just individual. We are not just tribal. We are not just collective. We are all of them inside everybody. And how we interact again through our strategy and authority brings these aspects out of us. It's not like you have to go, oh, I know that I'm a collective person, therefore I must go out and share this. Your strategy and your authority will naturally take you into situations where you are sharing. You will be able to look back on your life and go, well, I've always been sharing all these things with people. I've always been wanting to share things. And now you know why, because it's how you're designed. Now we go into what's called the not self. This is something that, again, you can see come up in the, say, like the Facebook groups a lot. People say, oh, that's a not self. Not self really means when you are making decisions that are not through your authority center. They're not by your strategy and authority. So if you're a generator, as we said, you waiting to respond, and that brings you satisfaction. Your not self signature is frustration. This is when life feels heavy, or you feel like your energy is just not going into something valuable, something that you really value. You're doing a boring, mundane job, and that feels like a drain on your energy. Or you're meeting a lot of resistance. Things just aren't lining up and everything feels difficult. And this is frustration. This means that at some point you've been making not self decisions. You've not been following your own sacral, or your own, if that's your authority, or your own solar plexus, emotional authority, in order to make your decisions. For projectors, when you're waiting for an invitation and you get that recognition and you're invited, you get the feeling of success. When you're not and you're trying to push things out into the world without waiting, you get the theme of bitterness. And this comes up as resentful of others. Maybe you see somebody else being successful and go, oh, that's not fair. So life's not fair, and you're bitter at being taken for granted or overlooked. Quite often for projectors, it's because they're overworking, or they're trying to get attention and not getting the right kind of attention. So again, go back to these are really good indicators, you see, for oh my God, this means I'm not operating, I'm not letting my body guide me in what's right for me. I'm overriding it. And the only reason you're overriding it is because you were told, or you learned at some point in your early childhood, that this was a better way to do things. So the whole thing about human design is about being able to pull back those layers, peel back those layers, and come back to who you're designed to be. So for the manifester, where if you inform people, you get this signature of peace. If you're not informing, then you get anger, and that's because you're not being able to make the impact that you know you can do. Maybe overworking and getting tired, or you're just not, your energy is not being released in the right places at the right times in the right way. So that there can be a huge amount of anger coming out of manifestor. It's very, very powerful anger. And then the reflector, waiting this lunar cycle, brings this quality of surprise in life. And the not self theme here is disappointment. When you've been trying to make things happen and nothing works out, or the people you meet seem to let you down, life just seems to let you down. That's because you've been trying to do things against your strategy and your authority. Next slide. Excuse me a minute. Okay, so this is how we get distracted from our strategy and our authority, through the undefined centers. Now, I know in this chart they're all colored in, but that's just to help you really be able to see the differences between them. But imagine if these are all the white centers. So look at now in your chart at your white centers. What is white in your chart? And then the not self dilemmas are where you're going to go into your mind to try and make a decision to compensate for something that maybe you feel you should have that you don't have. All right, so when you have white centers, you're taking in energy from other people, you're feeling it in your own body. So if you've got a white head center and somebody with a defined head center comes into your aura space, you immediately feel that sense of pressure in yourself, the pressure to resolve whatever questions there are. That energy isn't yours, it's come from the other person. So this is why we call it not self, because it's not you. It's not for you to be processing at that kind of pressure. All right, so when that person goes away again, you can still find yourself going, oh my God, I've got to work it out. Oh my God, can I answer these questions? And actually, they're not yours to answer. So this is how we get influenced through our lives by this energy coming into our body. We feel it and we try and act as though it's ours, or try and do something with it. We identify with it. So for each of these, if you look through your chart and look at your white centers and ask yourself, if you have a white head center, am I trying to answer everybody else's question? Do you get caught up in trying to answer questions that really you'd be maybe better off just going, that's not my bag, that's nothing to do with me, I don't need to do that. The Ashna center, are you trying to convince everyone that you're certain? Or maybe even just trying to convince yourself that you can have some kind of certainty, mental certainty. Throat center, are you doing things to try and attract attention? So it's as if you have a white throat center. Have you developed strategies in your life to try and make sure that people notice you? With the G center, the yellow diamond shape, are you actively doing things to go out there and look for love or some kind of sense of direction? For direction, you could also mean purpose. Are you going against your strategy and authority? It's going, I really must have, I should, I ought to have this feeling of love. I ought to have it all the time. With the will center, the little red triangle, do I think I have something to prove? Are you really trying hard to prove your worth to somebody? It could be even to somebody who's no longer alive. This is the pressure of conditioning, that it can leave these imprints in us, which we keep trying to fulfill long after the person has left this world. In what way are you pushing yourself to prove something, to prove that you're worthy, rather than just saying, well, actually, I'm good enough as I am? Self-improving. Are you pushing to try and self-improve because you think that you're faulty in some way? Okay. And then below that, the solar plexus on the right. Am I avoiding confrontation and truth? Are you deliberately not speaking your truth? I say deliberately. Or have you developed a conscious or unconscious strategy to not speak your truth because you're afraid of how somebody else will react emotionally? So again, take this as an example back into, say, that being a child, and you're accused of something and you tell the truth, and then because you've told the truth, the parent gets angry with you because you're feeling that emotion in your own body, if you have an emotionally defined parent, for example, and it's uncomfortable. So you learn to go, oh, well, if I don't say that thing, then that person won't get angry, and then I won't have to deal with that stuff in my body. And so you learn to not speak your truth because somebody else is going to have a go at you. You think, you fear that somebody else is going to have a go at you, be upset, and it gives you a load of stuff to deal with in your body that you don't want. Sacral center there. Do I know when enough is enough? So we're looking at projectors, manifestors, and reflectors here. This will not be generators. If you have this white sacral center, the theme here is, do you know when enough is enough? Are you able to stop doing things before you get completely exhausted? Are you able to respect your own inconsistent energy levels in your body and act accordingly? Or do you just keep pushing on, going, I must do a bit more, I need to do a bit more, or I could just do a little bit more? If you take an office environment and say it's filled with generators and there's one or two projectors or manifestors in there, you guarantee the people working after hours will probably going to be the projectors and the manifestors, because all the generators are gone, oh, I know that I've done enough, because they've got that internal sense that their battery's running out, so you need to go home and rest. Okay. Then the root center. Am I in a hurry to get things done so that I can be free of the pressure? So again, remember, this is a pressure center, and it brings that sense of urgency into the body, that feeling of like, oh my God, I must hurry up, must get things done, must do things quickly. If your root center is white, then you don't need to be doing these things. Are you doing that instead of waiting for, say, emotional clarity if you have an emotional authority? No, I must make a decision quickly. That's when you get into a not self decision. And then on the last one on the left is the spleen. Am I holding on to what is not good for me? The spleen, remember, is about our health and well-being and survival. So the theme here is not knowing what's healthy to hold on to or what should be let go of. Am I holding on to what's not good for me? How do I know what's not good for me and what is good for me? And am I just holding on to it because I'm afraid to let go of it, because I'm afraid? Remember, this is the survival center. I'm afraid that I'm not going to survive if I let go of something, you know, whether it's that job or if I let go of that person, am I going to survive? So there's survival fears in here. So these are the very, very powerful ways we get distracted. So unless you've got a chart where everything is coloured in, you'll have one or more of these white centres, and you can then begin to weave the story together of your not self life. Most common is, and most strongly conditioned, if you like, is the will centre. So that sense of, do I have something to prove? So for example, if you have an undefined will centre and an undefined G centre, do I have to prove that I'm lovable? Do I have to prove something in order to find love? And you can begin to weave them together and make up your own not self story. And there's the story of your pain and your suffering in your life. And that's why you do not have your sense of satisfaction, success, peace, or surprise, because you're acting out of these distractions rather than waiting to respond, waiting for an invitation, waiting and informing people at the right time, waiting for your authority center. These things make a lot of noise, a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort in our body, and therefore we've learned how to try and avoid that. If you have a completely undefined center, completely open, so this means there's none of the numbers in it are highlighted at all, then there's slightly different questions here for those centers. So where the previous slide we were looking at centers that might well have had little numbers highlighted in them, activations. This is for the ones where there's nothing at all, completely blank. So the head center has the dilemma of really not knowing what's interesting. The head could think that nothing's interesting or everything seems interesting. So one minute you're kind of going, yeah, meh, I don't know, nothing interests me. And the next minute it's like, oh my God, I've got to know everything about that. Especially people coming into human design where they go, oh, there's all this information, I've got to know it all. With a completely open head center, it's like, oh my goodness, you know, it can easily get very overwhelmed by just trying to take in more and more and more of the information, not knowing what they need to know, not knowing what's relevant to know, just kind of out of this sense of this pressure of this information, I must know it. So these are slightly different than the themes we've just been looking at, in that sense that they can be one thing or another. So it's everything or nothing. There's no shades of grey. And again, the solution to all of these is your strategy and your authority. Coming back to your definition, what's consistent in yourself, using your strategy, using your authority, and then noticing when your mind begins to show up some of these thoughts. It's like, oh my God, if I've made a promise to somebody, and if I don't follow through on it, then they're not going to think I'm a very good person. We're looking at the conditioning of the will center, or the heart center as it's called here. So we now have heart, will, and ego all for one center. That sense of, oh, I won't be deemed to be worthy person if I don't make a commitment and follow through. But if you don't have that energy defined, it's unhealthy for you to make those commitments and follow through. But you look at what the programming is in your mind, what the mental oughts, shoulds, fears that come up are, and then ask yourself, well, is my inner authority saying yes to doing that? Or is it just my fear that I'm trying to act out of that's trying to make me do it? All right, so always come home to your strategy and your authority, and that will resolve these dilemmas. They then begin to cease to be such strong dilemmas, and certainly they don't overtake your own inner knowing about what's right for you. So going back to our example chart here, you can see, so there's lots of definition down the bottom end of this chart. So the defined root, sacral, solar plexus, will, and spleen, and then everything open at the top. So the head would be trying to answer other people's questions, and the Ashna would be trying to get that some kind of certainty about the past or the future, some kind of certain idea, concept to hang on to. The throat, busy trying to attract attention or trying to make things happen. And the G center, trying to hold on to love or to find some sense of direction. And if those things start to take over, then this person who had this chart is not going to be able to wait, feel their response, and wait for their emotional clarity to enter into things correctly. So they're going to take the wrong job, they're going to get into the wrong relationships, because, oh, that person loves me, therefore it must be the right thing. No sense of waiting for emotional clarity through the relationship at all. Or throat, trying to attract attention, I've got to make things happen, instead of waiting to feel where their energy is naturally wanting to go. So they show up in your mind, and this creates your not self, and it is full of pain and frustration and bitterness. Your strategy and your authority is where you come back to home. There's another thing that is quite common when you look at your chart to know whether or not you have a split definition or a single definition. If you're a split definition, it basically means that, and I'm thinking about circuits, there are different aspects that are joined, connected to each other, but then aren't connected together. So you see I've kind of drawn like two islands here. So we've got the will and the solar plexus in one little group here over on the right. And then on the left, we've got the root and the sacral and the spleen defined, but they're not actually connected to each other. I've highlighted in yellow where the splits are, okay? So the energy doesn't completely join from the root center up to the solar plexus. It doesn't connect there. And the will center doesn't connect completely to the spleen center. So they're separated off from each other. So if that was an electric circuit diagram, the electricity would not be able to flow through the whole, all 5 of those centers in one go. So what we call these are bridging gates. What I've highlighted in yellow, they're called bridging gates. And this is where some of the deepest conditioning pressures can occur. So you, again, look up the themes of those and see how much of your life is run on trying to solve those dilemmas. All right. If you have a split definition. Now there are splits where it takes, like there are here, just a single gate to bridge them. And then there are wider splits. So for example, if this person here had, let's say, defined head and Ashna up here, then that would be what we call a wide split, because it would take more than one gate to connect it down to the solar plexus or to the will center or to the spleen center. All right, so there's a wide split, in which case that's a different kind of thing than what I'm talking about here. The tendency tends to be with wide splits, people think that it's other people are the problem. With single gate splits like this, it's where a person tends to feel that they're the problem, that they've got a problem, they're broken, and they need fixing. Just because they're that different quality when you have those bridging gates present. Say somebody else comes into your aura and they bring one of these bridging gates, there's a different quality in how you feel in your body. It's like wholeness, everything comes together. And then when that person goes away again, you're back into the sense of, oh, there's something missing. There isn't anything missing, it's just a function of the way you're designed. There are also things called triple splits and quadruple splits. So again, you look on your chart and see what that says about whether your single definition, split definition, triple split or quadruple split. Different sort of things apply depending on which one, but it gives you an idea of what to go and look for and what you're looking at here. Eventually, all being well, you follow your strategy and your authority, and then these open centers become your wisdom. They become your window onto the world where you really clearly see the differentiation between yourself and other people. An analogy I like to give here is if you've got a defined center, it's like it's limited to one flavor. Where you have an open center, you get to experience a variety of flavors because you're sampling that person's head center over there, and then another person's head center over there, and then another one comes in. So you're sampling lots of different kinds of that energy. So you get to have the whole 101 flavors of ice cream, whereas with a defined center, you're restricted and limited to the one. So the healthy aspects begin to come through. So when the head doesn't need to answer questions under pressure, you can begin to see Who is inspirational? Where do good thoughts and good questions? Who is able to do this kind of thinking and answering questions? Where's that coming from? Who has it? Then with the Ashna, when you're not absorbed in trying to get certain about things, then you can begin to see where are good ideas and concepts to be found. There's no need for you to get certain that that's the right one. You don't have to latch onto them. You can go, oh, that's an interesting idea. Oh, and there's another interesting idea over there. How fun is that? Look at this wonderful world of ideas we live in. There's nothing for me to do to engage with them unless my inner authority takes me there. Okay, so you can let go. The throat center can become very wise about what people are expressing and how is their energy manifesting in the world when you're not trying to push your energy out into the world out of some fear that you're not going to get recognized or invited, not able to stay silent. You can listen and you can hear. And some of our greatest actors and mimics have got an undefined throat center because they'll be able to hear and learn how to speak in different ways because they're not fixed, they're not limited. So you can hear whether somebody's speaking emotionally, are they speaking from their will, from their mind, from their spleen? Where's that voice coming from? What quality is there in the voice that you can hear? Is this somebody speaking their truth? Lots of wisdom in there. G center, people with an open G center here, very sensitive to the environment and to people. So you can be comfortable, when you're comfortable having no fixed identity or no fixed direction, then you can allow these people to take you on a journey and then let go of them. So who is this person really? What is their identity? And what's this direction going to be like? You're not attached to the direction, you don't have to identify with it, but you can be taken in a direction by somebody. Then also, what is love in all its different forms? Many different forms of love with an open, undefined G center. In this case, it's completely open. You notice there are no numbers highlighted in it at all in this chart. So this person would be able to really experience love in so many different forms without needing to identify with any one of them. Solar Plexus center. This is again the window on the emotional world of passion and relationships. What's happening in the emotional interactions? What's happening in somebody's own emotional energy? Are they aware of their emotions and using their emotions to make decisions, or are they just being, jumping off the high end or being very chaotic with their emotions and thus affecting all the people around them? And then, of course, somebody is not withholding their own truth out of fear of what the other person is going to say or do. And in the sacral center, a wonderful window on the generator world. So how is this juicy building energy being used creatively, or is it being suppressed in somebody? You can kind of read the health or the wellness in somebody else's sacral center. This is the thing that projectors are really here to guide, this sacral energy, because they have an undefined sacral and they're naturally guides. So they can tune into this person's sacral energy and help them to find the sweet spot where suddenly it lights up and goes, aha, yes, I've got the energy for this. Because all too often generators are running around being frustrated because they don't know, they're not aware of this aspect. So have they misused their sacral and has it kind of got a bit suppressed and squashed? And in the root center, what's a healthy drive and use of adrenaline fuel for change and growth? Now, we've got so much stress in the workplace at the moment. Some people are designed to handle it and some people aren't. So really a lot of wisdom here about what is a healthy use of this adrenaline fuel? How can it be channeled, guided? Who are the people who can handle it and can work in that way? And who are the people who can't, who are trying to, but they shouldn't be because they're not designed that way? So when you can feel the pressure without having to react to it, then you can enjoy stillness when there is no pressure, then you're able to get this wisdom. And then for the two centers that actually are coloured in here, which I haven't put in, there's the spleen. Obviously, you can be aware of somebody else's state of health and well-being. Or with the will center, somebody's sense of self-worth and their ability to make a commitment. Now, there are lots of people dying early from heart attacks because they're putting a lot of strain on themselves through making commitments that they haven't got the energy to follow up on. So when somebody says to you, oh yeah, I promise I'll do that, and I promise I'll do it by Friday, you can feel, oh, I don't think they've got the energy to do that. and they're trying to do it under pressure. So this is how you begin to get the wisdom, because you're feeling this in your own body but not identifying with it. So this is the healthy aspect of the white stuff in our chart. Next bit I'll come to is the profile. And so you'll see on your chart that gives you just 2 numbers. Very sort of cryptic and doesn't help. So you decode these 2 numbers by looking them up in this chart. These relate to the lines, and this is the lines of the hexagram. In the I Ching, it's made up of 6 lines. So the profile is taken from your personality, sun and earth, and it's the number after the dot. So in this example I've given you here, this person is a 4-6. 4 is the opportunist, also named as the externalizer, and 6 is the role model. There are altogether, I think, 12 different profile combinations. So you can look up your numbers, go and look up online what that means, because this is a significant aspect of how you live out your life through this profile. So this person here is an opportunist, is here to have a kind of network of people, from which they get their opportunities, and then on a design unconscious side to act out the role model, to become the role model. Lines 1, 2, 3 and 4 to a certain extent are personal, 5 and 6 are transpersonal, and the analogy that's often given is, if you imagine they're in a house, in the structure of a house, 1 is the investigator, is down in the basement looking at the foundations. The 2 is sort of like in the first floor window, just getting on, doing their own thing, but can be seen by other people, but they're not really aware of anybody else outside. 3, they're just kind of going, oh, hang on, there's another floor here, there's a staircase, I wonder what's up here. So they're beginning to become aware that there's another person to interact with. By the time you get to 4th line, they're definitely aware. They're very interested in, oh, yes, let's interact with these people. There's people out here to share and do things with. 5th line is the heretic. They've got something they want to sort of stand up at the top floor window and proclaim to the world, something practical and something to offer them. And then the 6th line has the most aloof perspective, aloof on the roof perspective from the highest sense. So the 5 and 6, you can see, are transpersonal. They can see that there are other people out there and want to interact with them. 4th line is sort of that bridge between, it's sort of a half in, half out. The profiles as they come up, the 4th line is 4-1, 4-6, it depends what's on the other side as to how that plays out. But this is roughly how they're structured. So somebody who's a 1-3, they're kind of going to be very much into their own process, but they're going to be aware enough of other people to go, actually, I want to play with them out there, but I want to be finding out what's the secure foundation. Okay, so just look at these, and then there's basically, so the profile is very key to understanding how you operate, but within your chart, you can find the chart statistics on mybodygraph.com. I'm not sure where it shows this, but you can just look down all your planetary activations and do a rough count up of how many of each line you have, because your profile might be a 4-6, but you might then find that you have 8 second lines, and that's kind of going to add a nuance onto it as well. Quite often, if somebody's profile is like a 4-6, then they will have more 4th lines and more 6th lines than anything else when you add up all the numbers. But it's just an interesting, again, a little nuance, because you can go where you find a line 1, that's something you're going to want to investigate. Where you find a line 2, that's some aspect where you have a natural skill or ability that takes you into a sense of aloneness, where you just do your own natural thing. Line 3 is where you're going to be experimenting with things. It's always going to be a bit of an experiment, and it's going to be lots of trial and error. Line 4 is where you're going to be looking at opportunities. And line 5 is where you're going to feel like you've got something to proclaim out to the world. And line 6 is where that ability to act as a role model comes in. So again, we are all a mixture of these things. We are not predominantly one or another. So again, if you're searching things out and people say, oh yes, I'm an opportunist, or yes, I'm a 3-5, you'll know what they're referring to, and it's the way they operate in the world. It's the way you operate in the world. It's the way they do too. So these are all these little bits of shorthand that people use when they're talking in, say, like the Facebook groups. But when you know the language, it means things. So far we've been dealing with the surface level of the chart, which a simple chart is sufficient for you to know. I think what I'm going to do is leave this here, and then I'm going to do another video later that will talk about what happens when you start to go below the surface level of the chart and you go into this advanced chart and look at things like variables, okay, and what they mean. So I'm going to stop this one here for now. So I hope this has helped you. Please do send me any comments, any feedback, and I hope it will help you to go out into the world of the internet and the world of Facebook and social media and find things and know how to put them, how to relate them to yourself through your own chart, what that's showing you about yourself. Of course, there are people who, and myself included, who can offer readings, and that's somebody who can put all this together for you and synthesize it in a way that shows you how it all operates. They would also be using sort of keynotes, line notes, all sorts of other details that I haven't gone into here. And that reading often is something that can be really foundational. And it is actually a prerequisite to going on to doing any of the training courses if you wanted to go and become an analyst, or you wanted to go further into living your design training courses, where again you can recap and learn more about this information. So reading is a good sort of foundation for you to begin your own experiment. So there's the knowledge, and then there's the experiment. And where the two meet, something magical happens, and it's called wisdom. And it's called living your life, living your potential for self-love at the end of the day, loving yourself. And through that recognition of yourself and how your understanding of this, being able to understand how everybody else has their design and how they live. And it really does help you to be able to then just love people for who they are, because they have a different design, and you can begin to look at it and go, oh wow, look at that, they're so different to me, and isn't that wonderful? And this is part of what I really love in this world, this world of human design, an ability to look at other people and go, wow, isn't that wonderful how differently they live and differently they see the world, what little piece of the world jigsaw puzzle they are. And also through knowing yourself, you're able to navigate the world of what's not you so much more effectively, so that you really get to live out that signature, that success, that frustration, not frustration, that success, that satisfaction, that sense of surprise, that sense of peace in the world. It really comes from knowing yourself in your body so well that you are operating as yourself, and their body's other doesn't touch you. You know how to interact with it without getting knocked away from being true to yourself. So thank you for listening. I hope that's helped. My website, by the way, is marianmay.co.uk, and I'll be posting more videos about human design at various points in the future. So I hope this has helped. Take care. Bye bye for now.